All right, everyone. Well, it's 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, so we're going to get started today. I hope you've all had a great week. This is week 8 of 8, which is our last session. And of course, today, for some of you, is the end of the school year. For some of you, the school year has already come to an end, but I'm delighted to have you all join us during today's session, and to wrap up the learning with all of us for this series of mBlock 5 STEAM on Board online training, learning to code fundamentals. So as always, if you have not already, I encourage you to take a moment to get started by opening up the webpage, mBlock5, or sorry, logicsacademy.com/STEAM on board. And there you're able to access lesson 8 and download the material. And then, of course, all the resources from before. So if you haven't already done so, please make sure to open up today lesson 8, which is titled A Running Moth, and we'll be going through that material. Of course, many of you have been with us in the whole series and are familiar with this program. And again, I just want to take a moment today to recognize all your commitment in joining this series, and also recognize the thousands and thousands of workshops and sessions that we've been running as part of our virtual training series. I'll share with you just a fun fact. So we've, through this series, we've trained close to 6,000 educators in Canada, with some great positive feedback from all of them. So we're really delighted to have been able to provide this so far. And we have some exciting news in which we'll be announcing after Canada Day for summer learning opportunities for teachers, and some perks along the way for that. So stay tuned, and you'll all be getting information if you've been part of the series. And as always, please connect with the community, stay in touch, continue to collaborate together at logicsacademy.com/community. We're going to be announcing some of the free giveaways for the community over the summer for at-home learning, which is really exciting. And lastly, today is the last day for submission for the Minecraft challenge. So make sure, if you are working with any students, to submit today. Over $30,000 of prizes available to be given away. So make sure to submit. This week and last week's recordings will be available on the website and on the YouTube channel by end of day today. And so all that will be available on our YouTube channel and linked to the website for you there, Ryan. Absolutely, Andrew, I'm delighted and excited to share this new exciting partnership and announcement for some awesome summer learning for educators. So stay tuned for that announcement. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Mina here, who's going to lead us in today. I think we'll have a little bit more time today for questions and answers at the end. So I'll be back, and we'll open up the floor for any Q&A. But again, to get started for today, make sure to download the curriculum for lesson 8. All right, over to you, Mina.
Thank you so much, Rami. And yes, I am excited for today's session. It's one of the fun ones that we get to explore. I know we kind of had some time to explore lesson 1, which was a lot of fun playing a game. And to be honest, this is a really neat series in the sense that it comes full circle with, the lessons and how we started playing a game in the beginning in lesson 1, and then how we're going to actually develop our own game here in lesson 8. So I feel like this is a nice culminating set of series and set of sessions that help you kind of see and build your code from beginning to end. And this is one of the neat things about this series here. So as I'm getting I'm not sure if you can, yeah, you can see my screen here. This is awesome. So if you haven't done so already, please open the files that we're going to be using today in mBlock 5. So those are the lesson plan, the PowerPoint, and also the two mBlock files that we're going to be using to in today's session. And what's really neat about this, as I mentioned, as you can see the lesson plan here, we're going to continue our use of conditional statements. Now, we were introduced to them last week as we got Panda to switch backgrounds once he's touched the end of the stage or the edge of the stage. And today we're going to be using that as well, along with other conditional statements and other sensing blocks to help us create a game called The Running Moth. So as always, I will be wearing a couple of hats, one being giving you teacher tips, and the other one is actually going through the lesson with you as if you are my students and we're going through this together. And again, feel free to use this in a means where you're at home with your children or with younger kids as a way to teach them the fundamentals of coding, or you can definitely use this in your classrooms physically when the time comes, or virtually online here. So we'll go through the lesson plan together and then jump into the PowerPoint and as well as the game. And we will have some time for Q&A. So feel free to, if you don't have a chance to write it in the chat, feel free to keep it in your mind, jot it down on a piece of paper, and then you can unmute your mic in the time and ask your question. So lesson 8, again, it's actually gone up a little bit in difficulty. We've been using the level of difficulty has been beginner, but now it's kind of transitioned into intermediate because we're no longer sharing with the students where to find the blocks, how to build the blocks. They have to do this on their own, but there is still some learning involved as we go along. So the objectives for today is to create a program that combines multiple conditional statements to create an interactive program in mBlock. We're going to continue to use changing the direction of the sprite and how it's positioned or how it looks on the screen. We're going to describe the two ways to detect keyboard input from a user and which one is better than the other. We're going to talk about the benefits of that. And then at the end, we're going to program a game to end based on a specific condition. So those are our main objectives. Again, you can see the overview here. So it says, by combining previously learned skills, students create an interactive game where the moth tries to avoid being eaten by the bat. And you're going to be doing something similar with Panda. Students will program the moth to move using multiple conditional statements that detect when the arrow keys are pressed. So we're going to use user input from the keys. And students program the game to end and stop all scripts using a conditional statement that detects if the bat and moth are touching. So that is something new that we will use today. As always, you can use the installed version of mBlock 5, or if that's giving you some trouble, as we heard from some of you last week, that you can open the web-based version and be able to use that online, and it connects seamlessly with your account. You can see that the standards, CSTA and ISTE national standards are there. The provincial standards are very similar, again, to lesson 7 because they have similar skills that your learners are going to be performing. So those are all there for you for your convenience. And we always go in and start the lesson with a warm-up, kind of just a review or a refresher of what we did last week. So jumping into the PowerPoint here, just make that a little bit bigger. There we go. oops, give me a second. There we go. As a review, for those that are maybe joining us for the first time, or maybe just need to refresh what we did, we got Panda to really explore Earth, because that he's new to Earth, and traveled around Earth, and we created a condition where if Panda's on the edge of the stage, not only will he bounce off, but the background will also change. And this simulates the kind of traveling between different areas of the world, or areas of Earth. Another condition we made as we completed the guided practice is using the mouse pointer to hover over Panda, and it will disappear. So hopefully you got a chance to play around with the mouse pointer and seeing if Panda hid. And then today we'll make it look like we're gonna take a look at more conditions and allow the program to make more decisions for us. So that was last week, and again, this is a quick review of the code that we used and the conditional statement that we used. If touching mouse pointer, then Panda will hide, and this code is in the Panda. So whatever happens, if the mouse pointer is touching Panda or the sprite that you're using, it will hide, otherwise it will show. So this is a quick review of what we did last week. Now today, we're going to be creating our own game, and feel free, it doesn't have to be a bat and a moth as you will see today, but and this is something that is open for your students or your learners to be creative and think of the ideas of game design and the iterative process of how to create a game and what is involved in a sense. So today we're going to introduce it, use conditional statements, and learn the benefits of some versus the other. So the first thing, I want to give you some context from the lesson plan to give you some idea of the background story. So you can see here on page 5 of the lesson plan, while traveling, Panda learned about many of the animals that live on Earth. While sleeping under the stars on a camping trip, Panda observed the bat chasing a moth. The moth was trying very hard to avoid the bat, but eventually the bat would catch the moth. Let's help Panda create a program that can reenact this scene. So that is the story behind what we're doing today. We're trying to get the moth to avoid the bat that it's trying to capture it. So what we're going to do now, and you feel free to do this with me, is open the file that is in your folder. So reminder again, the folder has different types of files. It has 2 PDFs. One is a lesson plan, one is the slide deck, and then you have the actual PowerPoint version of the slide deck. And then a folder, you might need to unzip it if you have that, of example programs. And we're going to open the mBlock file that's inside of it called Lesson 8, A Running Moth. So you can double click by opening it, or you can go ahead and open mBlock 5 and then do File Open from Computer or Import from Computer. Both ways work if you've tried that out. Now, I did this intentionally so that we don't look at the code. I just want you to take a second and press the green flag, play the game. I've kind of made it a full screen so that we don't see the code behind it. And as you're playing the game, or as you see me playing the game, if you don't have access to these files yet, please put in the chat box what you are noticing in this game. Okay, we're gonna decompose this game together into smaller subproblems, which we started last week. And type in the chat box, what are some features of the game that have been programmed into this particular game? So I'm going to go ahead and click on the green flag. I'm going to start my game. And just by the way, the user, which is yourself or myself, is the moth, and I'm going to be using the left, right, up, and down arrows to move away. Now, something happened here. So feel free. I'm going to keep playing the game, see if I can stay alive as best as I can, or as much as I can, just by moving away from this bat. And please go ahead. Oh, I lost again. I'm not good at this game, but please write in what you are noticing and what are some of the features of this code that you may be able to see later on when we do decompose it. So it's movements, what else is happening. So take a second, type that in the chat. I'm definitely not good at this game. This bat is really eager to catch me. But take a second as you are exploring and write down some of the things that you notice or observe in this game. And that could include conditional statements, loops. What are some things that's happening just by observing? You don't have to include code. And then we'll kind of go through together some of the features that you may have seen. So awesome. I do see some chat coming in. When the bat touches the moth disappears. Absolutely. That's kind of like a game over type of feature. Bat bouncing off the edges. Excellent. We saw that with Panda last week. Tracking the movement of the moth. Very good. These are all awesome things or features of this game. And we've seen some of them before. Some of them are new, such as the moth kind of maybe falling down. I don't know if you noticed that. If the bat touches the moth falls down and disappears. So we're going to see something similar around that. We have two sprites. We have a background. The bat is moving. Those are all things. The bat is even changing costumes while it's moving. So those are kind of parallel programs that are happening at the same time for this game. Yeah, so one sprite following or tracking the other is new, but we're going to explore that today. And very good, Sierra, bat points in direction of the moth. So we're all going to be doing this together. So I just wanted to give you that opportunity to really explore this game on your own, and then feel free to keep playing around with it without looking at the code, and we'll revisit the code later on in today's session. So kind of did this, use the arrow keys on the keyboard to control the movement, and how long can you stay alive. I did not do a good job at that. Hopefully you did better than I did and stayed alive longer. So now we're going to get our hands on the conditional statements that we saw last week. We're revisiting today. And I want to give you an opportunity to try this with your learners. And this is not just getting into the code right away. This is something new that you may not have learned, or you may not have heard of in the past. But we're gonna, in lesson 3, we used event blocks and talented transformations, and we used the when space key is pressed. So today we're gonna look at another way to use the arrow keys, right? Instead of events, we're going to use if statements or conditional statements to control the motion of our sprite. So here are our conditional statements. I'm gonna read for you all 5 of them, and I'm going to explain what this is in terms of the prior to coding. So the first one is if the up arrow key is pressed, then the sprite moves up. Number 2 is if the down arrow key is pressed, then the sprite moves down. If the left arrow key is pressed, then the sprite moves left. If the right arrow key is pressed, then the sprite moves right. And finally, if the panda touches the opponent, then the game is over, or stop all scripts. So if you are able to get your learners to create or write down these 5 conditional statements that they saw from the game that they would have played initially, this is something called writing pseudocode. So it's not completely the code itself, but it's you're getting your students to articulate in their own language what you would like to use in a program in the future. So it's similar to the code itself, but it's not completely the code. So we experienced that a little bit today. We are experiencing it more. We experienced it last week and we're experiencing it more today. So writing in pseudocode could be helpful as you are preparing your learners to write in code in the next step. Now we get into changing direction. So it's really simple to create your if statements. We'll do this together for Panda, but we also want to do this at the same time, changing the direction of the sprite. So not only will Panda move by pressing a keyboard button, but also stay in or face the direction that it should be when it is moving. So this is a brand new block that is found under the motion area, the motion menu, and it's called point in direction. Default is 90, but we're going to see what those numbers mean. And the function is to specify the direction the sprite is facing, and it adjusts the direction using a diagram or inputting a value. So it actually uses like a compass or a dial to that you can move around and select the values. And you can see on the right side the example code that is on there. They have 3 if statements, and each one has a movement block to get their sprite to move, as well as a point in direction block. So we're going to see how we're going to do this in just a second. The next thing we're going to use, obviously, is not, we're not going to use the when key is pressed. That's an event. We've tried that before. But we're going to try to use the when if key space is pressed, and you can select using the drop-down menu the different blocks or the different buttons that you can use on the keyboard. So the function of this block is it senses movement on the keyboard or user input from the keyboard, and it's used in a conditional statement to determine if this condition is met. So we're going to do this together. We're going to build a code. This is step 1. I'm going to jump into mBlock 5 and start a new program, but we're going to use step 1 and the blocks in step 1 to help us create an input for the movements of Panda. So again, if you go into mBlock 5, you can exit this full screen mode, and I'm going to start a new program. I don't need to save this one because it's the example program. And once it's ready, again, default, we are in a devices tab, but because we're not using devices, you can just click on sprites. We don't need to change the sprite. We're just going to use Panda as our sprite to control, and we're going to create another sprite to kind of be the opponent or trying to catch Panda, which is going to be a lot of fun. So you can go ahead and take out the blocks that you need. You can see that in step 1 of the PowerPoint slides. So we definitely need a forever loop. We need one if statement, a sensing block, point in direction, and move 5 steps. And don't forget the event of when flag is clicked. So and feel free to do this with your learners, where you can take out the blocks and not put them together all at once, but just have them on your screen, and then you can go ahead and ask them where does each block go, and explain why they're doing this, and as in part of putting their code together. So here's my move. I'm going to change that to 5 steps, and we're going to take out the new block that we are going to explore. It's called point in direction. So because our code needs to constantly check whether or not the space key is pressed, we need this forever loop. And we talked about this last week. Let me zoom in a little bit so everyone can see. We need the forever loop to constantly check. Now it's constantly checking if or a conditional that needs to be met. So if the key is pressed. Now we're not going to use the space bar to control Panda. We're going to use, we can start with the up arrow. So if key up arrow pressed, then what do we need our Panda to do? When I press the up arrow, what should we see Panda do when it does, when it hopefully moves? So please post that in the chat. What should be our condition, or what should be our that after the then that needs to be met? So we have 2 more blocks left, but we're going to also see the importance of sequences in this particular code. So yes, we don't have a move up block, so we don't have a move like to go up, but we're going to see we have a move steps, right? But we know that if I just have this block in here, okay, and I press the flag, and I press the up arrow, what is happening to my Panda? I'm literally pressing the up arrow, but what's happening to Panda? I'm going to try this again. He's not moving up. Okay, I'm going to click on flag, up arrow, but he's moving towards the right. And the reason being is we have not directed the program to determine what is up or what is down or what is left or what is right. The default is the right position. So we need this point in direction block to be on top of the move 5 steps, because we wanted to tell the program or initiate the program to provide a sense of direction. And if you click on this particular number, so the 90 degrees, you can see that it's default on towards the right side, and we need to move it to 0 degrees because that is associated with the if statement or the conditional that we have just built together. So you can test it out now. It should work. I'm going to press up, and you can see that Panda moves up, and he actually points, he turns and points in that direction, and is moving those 5 steps forward or 5 steps up. So what I'm going to get you to do now, and take a second to do this as I am also doing it, is to create the next 3 blocks of code for the button presses of pressing the down button, pressing the left arrow, and pressing the right arrow. So take a second and again, talk about the importance of duplicating code. Now, to help me duplicate a particular code, I need to click on the first if statement because that is the chunk that we need to duplicate. And we're going to keep it inside the forever loop, but right underneath the first if statement that we have built together. And it's really important. Some of your learners may duplicate code just, to work really fast. They want to get this done, but they haven't fixed all the components of that code to match what they what they wanted to do for Panda. So they may not change the key up arrows pressed or pointing direction or anything else that needs to be changed. They just duplicate it and want to get it over with. But it's really important to ask them to test it out and then go back and check what is going on or what's wrong. And I've been as I continue to build code, I've been in situations where I haven't changed what's inside the code. So it's really important to model that for your learners. So go ahead, I'm going to do the down arrow, select the dial pointing down, which is 180, and you can actually duplicate a chunk of code at a time. So wherever you duplicate from, everything underneath it will copy. So I'm actually going to duplicate 2 blocks at a time, the 2 if statements. You can see that on my screen. I've copied the 2 if statements. So this is something new if you haven't done this already. And instead of duplicating 1 block at a time or 1 block stack at a time, it may be a bit tedious, but you can feel free to think about, okay, if I have 2 and now I need 4, so I can just only duplicate once versus 2 more times. So these things can come up as you are learning as we go along. So I'm going to do the right arrow, point direction. Here's my dial. And then, oops, actually ran my code. And then left arrow. And don't forget the direction. So for now, we have completed all the control for our Panda, and we can go ahead and run the code. So you can see that Panda, there is another problem that we're running into. Hopefully you have noticed that. And it's a block that we need to do. We need to add. And you'll notice that he's upside down at times. So we need to use a block called point in direction. Sorry, not point in direction. Set rotation style. This is the block that we need to do. And we're going to put it right at the top just before the when flag is clicked. That hopefully solves the problem of Panda kind of being upside down. It does point in direction. You could do like the don't rotate or all around, depending on how you want the your code to run. But definitely you can use the set rotation on your code. I do see a question here. Could students get into the habit of adding a comment to the code to track what they are trying to get Panda to do? Absolutely, I agree. And to create a comment, if you're not sure how to do that, you can right click on the code. So the same way you duplicate the code, there is a place where it says add comment, and you can go ahead and add a comment and say this code allows for Panda to move on the screen. So it just helps. It helps your learners. You can even minimize it and open it up. It helps your learners to really keep track of what their codes are like and what blocks do certain actions, especially when their game gets a little bit more expansive and a little bit more difficult to read. So using comments is definitely a great feature. I would recommend it, and I would highly encourage that for you and encourage your learners to use that as well. So we got Panda to move with using all the if statements, and I wanted to describe or explain to you the benefit of using if statements in directions versus the ones that we've used before, which is when space key is pressed. So the main benefit of using if statements versus the events is that it constantly checks. It doesn't lag, and it also allows you to move diagonally. So using the when space key is pressed, or when right key is pressed, or whatever it is, you have to press that button and you can't press anything else. So this code that we just built together allows you to press all these buttons, or you can press up and right, and it will go up diagonally towards the right. And you can try this out. I'm going to press the green flag, and you can see that my Panda is going diagonal and in any direction that you want it to go. So this is a really neat feature of, or the benefit of using if statements versus just using events. And again, we explained events earlier because we wanted it to really get the user to know how to use user input. But because we already know that, we wanted to expand our learning as we went along. So this is a really neat way to explain the benefits of using if statements rather than events. So I'm going to just drag that away, and we're going to continue to build the rest of our code to help Panda move away from our opponents. So I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint here, and we kind of did this all together. Now we're getting into stopping scripts. Now, if you're not familiar with the term script is just your code in blocks. So in mBlock 5, it does use scripts. Scratch also uses scripts as a means to explain the code. But as we stop scripts, or as we stop our code, essentially, you can find this block in the control area. It's somewhere right at the bottom of the menu. And we're going to be using a couple of new directions. So we're going to direct Panda to point in direction, okay? And also, we're gonna use this for our opponent. So we're going to create another sprite to get Panda to run from, just like the moth and the bat, and really create another conditional statement if the moth, or if the opponent is touching Panda, then we're going to stop. So we're going to build this code together, and we're going to start with initially the when flag is clicked, we're going to use point in direction. So this helps us, instead of getting the opponent pointing always towards the right or to the left, we can point it in various different directions. It doesn't have to be 45. So we can explore that a little bit. We're going to set its rotation style. We're going to get it to move forever, and if it's on the edge, it's going to bounce. So we're going to do this together, and then we're going to add an if statement where it says if touching Panda, because you can select, instead of bug, you can select Panda. If touching Panda, we're going to wait a second or half a second, whatever you need, and then stop all. So this is what we're going to be building together. So you can go back to mBlock 5, add another sprite, and I'm pretty sure you remember how to add a sprite. I'm going to add a beach ball because it is summer. And I'm going to add beach ball 1 to my code. Click OK. And we can start building our code for our beach ball. Now you can see the beach ball is a bit bigger than Panda, and you can change the size. Instead of using in the looks menu set size by or set size to, you can just change the size to whatever amount you like, just to make it a little bit more fair for Panda. And another thing that we haven't done yet, or at all, is actually change the sprite name. So I can call this opponent. So this is also helpful. You can press enter. This is also helpful when you're creating so many sprites and you want to give them particular names, like enemy 1, or evil 2, whatever, as you're building this game, to help you differentiate what is the good sprite or what is the bad sprite in your game design. So changing the name of the sprite is really important, changing the size, and so on. So we're going to build this code again when flag is clicked. Okay, we're going to point in a direction that is not, we're not going to get the ball to just go back and forth. That's not fun, right? So we can use a point in direction. And again, as we have pointed in direction, you can actually, we're going to start the ball on the top right, and we're going to start Panda at the bottom left. Okay, so that will be our starting positions. Again, very similar to the code of the running moth. And to answer actually Andrew's question, could we use a random number for the angle? Absolutely. This is an extension that you can add to your code, and your learners will probably be like, can I add random angles? Yes, you can. And it's really, we haven't gone through this yet. This is not part of our series, but operators is where you can find this random pick random number, or this pick random operator. And it's really neat because if you slide it and put it into the block, it fits right in nicely, just very similar to the if-then statements. But you can initially choose, again, your angles are between 0 and 360. So you can tell the program, to go in between a certain set of angles. It can be like 0 or even like 10 or 15 to 45. So we can initially, tell the program to turn in specific range of directions. So this can be very helpful. This is an extension. I'm going to keep it just because it's our last class or our last session. And we're going to have a little bit more fun with this. So not only will it just, point in a direction that is not, left and right, up and down, but it's going to randomize this angle. So it's a really neat feature that we are adding. Just going to go back to my code. So we've added the point in direction. We're going to set rotation style and then get Panda to move. So we're going to go back, set rotation style. Where is it? Here it is. And we obviously need our forever block because we need Panda to move. So we need Panda to move. Again, not Panda, rather the opponent or my beach ball. You can start with 5 steps, but feel free to increase the difficulty by increasing the number of steps of the ball moving. So I will start with 5, but feel free to change it to 6, 7, 10, however difficult you want it to be. So move 5 steps. Now, if it's on the edge, it will bounce. And then we're going to create our conditional statement with our stop all script. So if on edge bounce, it's on here on the motion menu. And we're going to take out an if then statement. And under sensing, we're going to take out if touching. Now, we used this before. We used the if touching mouse pointer. But what's really neat about this code or this block rather, is if you have 5 sprites, all 5 sprites will show up here as an option. Okay, so right now it's if touching edge. We don't need that one. We already have that block, but you could, create an if then statement, but you already have it as an initial block there. But we needed to say if touching Panda. So that is the main important use for this code or this block. So if touching Panda, then we want the game to end. So we can add a stop all. And this is the new block that we're using today. It's under control somewhere near the end. It also has a drop-down menu. And so you can say stop all. So all the scripts in all the sprites of this program. Or you can select stop this particular script, but everything else could be running. Or you can stop other scripts in the sprite. So this is a really neat tool. We didn't get a chance to go into it as much, but we're going to use stop all. Basically, the game's over. We don't want anything else to run. The ball touched Panda. That's it. Game's over. But before we do this, we're going to use a wait block. And this is important to help us kind of wait a little bit before everything stops. And it gives it, maybe you can change this value to 0.5 or something smaller, just so you don't run into any issues with stopping the code right away. So, and we're actually going to start our positions for both Panda and the beach ball. So don't forget to add your position block. Here it is, go to XY. So this is for my beach ball, and then Panda, I will get him to start where he is. Again, if you move Panda, it changes the go to XY block. So I hope you remember that from before. So these are all extras. It's not in the lesson plan, but it is something that your learners can say, hey, can I get Panda to start here? Can I get the ball to start here? It's things that they can, or features that they can add. So we can go ahead and run this code. You can see that my ball is bouncing and I have touched the ball. My script has stopped. So, and you can keep running this again. It will start at its positions. You can increase the difficulty of this game by increasing the number of steps of the ball. So I'll show you an example. If we go back to the ball, add, maybe we can make it really hard, 10 steps. And let's run the code. So you can see that the ball is bouncing really fast. It's moving. There's no way I'm going to win this game. But as soon as the ball touches Panda, the script has stopped. The other thing that you can add is a wait block at the beginning. And the reason why you could add a wait block is to give your learners, or even give yourself, some time to click on the flag and then get your hand, your right hand or your left hand, on the keyboard to start moving Panda. So it doesn't, like, you don't clash in the time that you press the green flag and when you move your hand to the keyboard. So you can definitely add a wait block at the beginning. So wait a second, then it will go to that position, point in a random direction, set its rotation, and then start moving and bouncing and all that fun stuff. So this is a really neat way to help, run your code as a game. And we've created this together. It's very similar to running Moth, but it also provides your learners an opportunity to really add more features and more extensions to their game. Now I'm going to quickly go back to the example that we had of our running Moth game. So we're going to go back and look at the code and kind of dissect it a little bit before we end off the session and have some time for Q&A, maybe to add some features or if you have any questions about the code. So I'm going to save this particular code. I'm going to add that to my community. So I'm going to call it Panda running from ball. Enter. You can click on save, or you can save it right on your computer. Again, clicking on save saves it to your online account, and it can also save to my computer. Then we're going to go ahead and open the game again, so that we're able to try this out. Look at the code, talk about the extensions that your learners can add, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So I've just saved my code there. I'm going to open my other one. So file, import from your computer, or you can go to the file itself and open it there. So we're going to do running Moth game. And what's really neat is that you'll see the movements of the bat. So we saw this earlier. This is the bug, or the moth, right? So we built this together, but there's some new blocks, like the go-to block. We did this, but the new blocks are the show, right? So you can get it to show and hide. So if you scroll down, so they have the if statement in the moth rather than in the opponent, right? So if it says if touching bat, this is also a neat part. It's going to point in direction downwards, 180 is down, and it's going to move 5 steps, and it's going to repeat this 10 times. What this actually does is it gets the moth to fall down. So you have this falling down feature that is in addition to it stopping. So this is a cool block here. I'm just going to take it out to show you here. It's if touching bat 1, repeat 10. So this is the block that gets the moth to fall. So point in direction, move 5 steps downward, and then it will hide. So this is a neat block that your learners can also add. But whenever we have the hide, we also need to have the show. They've also put a block called set size to 30%. And they initially told the program, whatever size it is, set it to 30, and then you can run the code. So this is the block that they've used. And then this is my favorite part, because it has this parallel programming that is running for one sprite, and you can have parallel programming happening for all your sprites. But this one is cool because we're showing, so this is under the bat now, we're showing the bat, it's waiting a second, it's giving you some time to play the game. Point in a direction, set rotation. Here is the same thing we did. So moving 5 steps, if on edge it bounces. If it's touching bug 2 or the moth, it's going to wait a second, but before it stops, it's going to hide. So you can get both the moth and the bat to hide when they touch each other, and then show up again at the beginning of the code. So this is another feature that you can add. And this one on the left side, this code on the left is my favorite. It actually codes for the bat to change costume. So you can see here, this forever loop has a next costume block. We've done this before when Panda is moving, and wait 0.2 seconds before the next costume is switched. And it also starts at a particular XY coordinate. The other thing that you could add for your Panda that I haven't done is actually do a next costume block, right? You can actually get Panda to show that it's moving. This was kind of in lesson 1, 2, or 3. I can't remember exactly. But you can use the next costume block in there to help you simulate the movement of your Panda and your opponent. So you can have costume switching in any of the sprites that have costumes, okay? So this is something that you can add as well. So these are some of the features of this running moth game. Again, by all means, these are not all the features that you can add. There's so much more that you can add to this. But for the time being, I do want to go through quickly the independent practice that you can try out and then post in the community later on. But these are some of the requirements of the game. We kind of built it together. Contains 2 sprites and a background. Set starting positions when the green flag is clicked. Program the moth to move using the arrow keys, or program your sprite to move the arrow keys. Use conditional statements, so that's also part of that. Program your opponent to fly around the stage after waiting 1 second. Create an animation of the wings flapping on the bat. End the game and stop all scripts when the sprites are touching. So those are all things that we initially started today. But extensions are also really cool. Program the moth to fall and hide when it touches the bat. And that's the code that we saw earlier. Changing the transformation effect of the moth when it touches the bat, so it can maybe kind of pixelate or go into ghost mode. Those are some things that we did before. And also adding Panda to the program to watch the moth and the bat kind of battle against each other. So those are some extensions that you can share with your learners. But again, these are not all the extensions that you can add. You can add various and many different types of extensions to their games. Finally, as a review, as we start to wrap up, as always, today we actually have 4 review questions versus the 3 that we've always had. And please use the chat as you're answering this question with me. So from the following options, which block can stop the action of all the sprites? Is it A, B, C, or D? And Oliver is on it. It is A, it is correct. Stop all. B is only stopping the script. C is only stopping other scripts, but it's not stopping everything. And then wait until we have not seen that. That doesn't stop anything. Great. Next question. Which block combination is used to animate the effect of the character that is falling down from the air? Is it A, B, C, or D? So take a second and think about what is the angle that it needs to be pointing in direction. And go ahead and post your answer there. I'm seeing A. But A or B, so you guys are confused. It's okay. The difference between A and B is that, as Andrew said, it moves a little bit down. It literally just does this once, right? So it waits a second, points in the direction of down, and then just moves that 5 steps. But B is the correct answer because it's forever moving down. And you can actually code this as well. We can get Panda to forever move down, and then if touching the edge, stop script. So you can get that's another extension that you can add. So awesome. Sorry I confused you there, but B is the right answer. Question 3, when pressing the C button, what will the character say? A, B, C, or D? That one's an easy one. So if you press the key C, what should the character say, or what should your sprite say? And just for the sake of time, the answer is A, because the character will say A. It's on here because you've pressed the C button. So this is kind of like a trick for you here. And the last question before we wrap up, pressing what kind of key, so pressing blank key can realize the effect of stop all immediately. So this is a trick question again. Which one or which key button that needs to be pressed to stop all the sprites immediately, right away? So is it the up arrow, the down arrow, the left arrow, A, S, or right arrow? So so you're explaining in arrows here. So there's no A, B, C, or D. So yes, it is the right arrow. It stops it immediately because if you look at the first block, it says wait 1 second. So it's not immediate, it's waiting that 1 second and then it stops right away. Versus the right arrow, it says D and then stops all. So awesome job. And I'll leave you all by thanking you for this great opportunity to run through these sessions with you and go through this series together. I hope you've learned some new things, maybe expanded on your old things, but I'm going to pass it on to Rami and we'll see if you have any questions during this time. Sorry, Rami, I think you're muted. Yeah.
Sorry for that. So first of all, I want to take a few moments to thank Mina for his time and effort over the past 8 weeks in leading us through this learning environment. And I sure hope that everyone had a wonderful time learning something new, opening up new boundaries in case you've never used mBlock 5 or if you've never programmed before. And I hope this has equipped you with your students to be able to work, whether it's now or when we get back in school after the summer. Just want to leave you with a note that the videos for all 8 weeks will be available on the site as of end of day today, and will stay over the summer and through our next year. So you can always reference them back, as well as the curriculum content. So you can access them as well anytime you need to. So with that, and with recognizing it's 12:30, I just want to officially end it and say thank you everyone for an awesome series. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll stick around for any questions that you may have. And I want to wish you a fantastic summer and a fantastic weekend.